I am Samantha Davis, 32, founder and CEO of Nexus AI. Growing up, my parents dismissed my coding as just playing computer games. They never understood what I was building. 10 years later, at my brother James's engagement dinner, his fiancée Jessica walked in, confident and smiling. Then she saw me. Her wine glass froze midair. Her face went pale. "Oh my God," she gasped. Loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "You're SL Davis? The $250 million CEO we just partnered with." Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had your passions dismissed by the people who should have supported you most. I grew up in a typical middle-class family in Columbus, Ohio. My dad, Robert, was an accountant who worked at the same firm for 30 years. My mom, Karen, taught third grade at the local elementary school. They were good people with traditional values and conventional expectations for their children. My brother, James, 3 years older than me, fit perfectly into their vision. He played football, got solid grades, and was studying business with plans to go into finance. Then there was me, the different one. My fascination with computers began when I was 9. My uncle gave me his old desktop when he upgraded to a newer model. While other kids were playing outside, I was teaching myself how to make that machine do things. Within weeks, I figured out how to customize the operating system. By age 12, I had taught myself HTML and CSS from library books and was building basic websites. "Samantha, you've been playing those computer games all day again," my mom would say, peeking into my room where I was actually coding a website for our neighbor's bakery. "It's not a game, Mom. I'm building a website," I would explain for the 100th time. "That's nice, honey. Just don't forget to do your real homework." To them, anything involving a computer screen that wasn't a school assignment was games. My dad would regularly come in and stand behind me, watching the lines of code on my screen with a mixture of confusion and concern. "I don't understand why you waste so much time with this stuff," he'd say. "You could be outside, or reading books, or doing something productive." The irony was that I was being productive. By 14, I was making small amounts of money fixing neighbors' computers and building simple websites for local businesses. But my parents saw it as a quirky hobby at best, a distraction at worst. School was never difficult for me. I maintained straight A's without much effort, especially in math and science. In my sophomore year of high school, I created a program that analyzed weather patterns and predicted the best planting times for different crops. It won first place at the school science fair and went on to place third at the state level. My parents attended the award ceremony, of course. They sat politely and clapped when my name was called. But the pride in their eyes didn't match what I'd seen 2 weeks earlier when James got an internship at a local bank. That night, they took him out for a celebratory dinner. For my science fair win, I got a simple, "Good job, Samantha," and a pat on the shoulder. "Your brother is really setting himself up for a stable future," my dad commented on the drive home from my science fair. That banking connection could lead to a real career. The implication was clear. What I was doing wasn't going to lead to a real career. By 17, I had developed my first legitimate application, a simple program that helped local restaurants manage their deliveries more efficiently. 3 restaurants in our area paid me to use it. When I showed my parents the check for $800, their reaction was lukewarm at best. "That's a nice bit of spending money," my mom said. "But when will you grow out of this computer phase? Have you thought about teaching like me? You're so good with explanations." "Or business," my dad suggested. "Not necessarily accounting, but something practical. Your math skills could be put to better use." "This is practical," I insisted. "People are paying me to solve their problems with software." My dad looked skeptical. "A few local restaurants using your little program isn't a career path, Samantha. It's a hobby that happened to earn you some pocket money." Throughout high school, I became known as the tech girl. Teachers would call me when their computers froze or when the projector wouldn't connect. Students would ask me to help recover lost files or speed up their laptops. I embraced the identity, even as my parents continued to hope I would develop more serious interests. Senior year of high school, when college applications rolled around, the disconnect between my vision for my future and my parents' expectations became impossible to ignore. Boston College has an excellent education program, my mom said, spreading brochures across the kitchen table. And Ohio State's business school has offered scholarships to students with your GPA. Meanwhile, I was applying to MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon for computer science. Those schools are so expensive, my dad warned when he found out. And for what? To learn more about computers when you could get a perfectly good education degree from a state school? When my MIT acceptance letter arrived, I cried with joy. My parents congratulated me, but the tension was palpable. How exactly do you plan to pay for this? My dad asked. We've saved for your college, but not MIT prices. I'll take out loans if I need to, I said. This is my dream school. Taking on debt for a computer degree seems foolish, he replied. But you're 18 now. If you want to make that mistake, we can't stop you. Those words stung, but they didn't change my mind. I was going to MIT with or without their emotional support. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a much longer and more painful journey to earn my parents' respect and understanding. MIT was everything I had hoped for and more. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who didn't just tolerate my passion for technology, they shared it. My roommate was developing a mobile app for mental health. The guy across the hall had built a robot that could solve a Rubik's Cube. My study group debated the future of artificial intelligence until the library closed. I had found my people. The coursework was challenging, even for someone who had been coding since childhood. I struggled with some advanced concepts, pulled all-nighters before big projects, and occasionally questioned if I belonged there. But I never regretted my choice, not even when my parents called to remind me about the student loans accumulating in my name. James is already getting job offers from his internship, my mom mentioned during one call. No student debt, and a starting salary that will let him buy a car right away. I bit my tongue. I was happy for my brother, but the constant comparisons were exhausting. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Linda Wilson, who taught advanced algorithms. Unlike most professors who maintained professional distance, Professor Wilson took a personal interest in her students. After I stayed behind to ask questions about binary search trees one day, she invited me to her office hours. You have a gift for seeing patterns, she told me, reviewing my latest assignment. Have you thought about what you want to do after graduation? I admitted I wasn't sure yet. Something with data, maybe? I like finding solutions in large sets of information. She nodded thoughtfully. The tech industry needs more women with your skills. Too many brilliant female minds get diverted to adjacent fields because they don't see themselves represented in tech leadership. Her words struck a chord. It wasn't just my parents who had trouble seeing me as a tech entrepreneur. Society had the same blind spot. That summer, I landed an internship at a major tech company in San Francisco. The experience was illuminating. I worked on real projects with real impact, collaborated with talented engineers, and got my first taste of Silicon Valley culture. I also noticed how few women occupied senior positions and how differently female suggestions were received in meetings. Despite these challenges, the internship confirmed I was on the right path. I returned to MIT for junior year with renewed purpose and focus. That's when everything changed. During an independent study project, I developed an algorithm for processing unstructured data that was significantly more efficient than existing methods. My professor was impressed enough to help me publish a paper on it. Though I didn't realize it at the time, that algorithm would eventually become the foundation of my company. By senior year, I had a clear vision. I wanted to build a platform that would revolutionize how companies utilize their data. Existing solutions were clunky, expensive, and required specialized knowledge. I believed I could create something more intuitive and powerful. I spent months refining my business plan. I researched the market, identified potential competitors, and calculated startup costs. I would need approximately $50,000 to develop a minimum viable product, a sum that seemed astronomical to a college student drowning in loan debt. With graduation approaching, I made a decision that would alter the course of my relationship with my parents. I would ask them for a loan to start my business. I flew home for spring break with my detailed business plan printed and bound. I had practiced my pitch countless times. I felt nervous, but confident. Surely they would see how serious and prepared I was. We sat down for dinner my first night home. Mom had made my favorite lasagna. Perhaps sensing this visit was important to me, after catching up on family news, I took a deep breath and shared my vision. I have a business idea I want to pursue after graduation, I began, pulling out my presentation. I've developed an algorithm that can process data more efficiently than anything currently on the market. My father put down his fork. A business? What kind of business? A software company, I explained, showing them the market analysis page. Companies are drowning in data, but can't extract useful insights. My platform would solve that problem. My mother looked confused. Wouldn't you need to work for a big company first? Learn how businesses operate. That's the traditional path. I acknowledged. But tech startups don't always follow traditional paths. I have the technical skills now, and first mover advantage is crucial in this space. My father flipped through my business plan with increasing skepticism. When he reached the financial projections, his expression hardened. You want to borrow $50,000 from us to build a computer program. It's not just a program, Dad. It's a platform that could transform how businesses. Samantha, he interrupted. You've been playing computer games your entire life. Now you want us to fund it as a business. His characterization stung. They're not games. I've been coding. Building applications that solve real problems. You've been tinkering, he corrected. And now instead of getting a real job with your expensive degree, you want to continue tinkering with our money. My mother placed her hand on mine. Honey, we just want what's best for you. Maybe start with something more stable? My friend's daughter works at the school district's IT help desk. The benefits are excellent. I don't want to work at a help desk, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I want to build something innovative. My father leaned forward. Innovation comes after experience. My friend Thomas runs the IT department at his accounting firm. He'd give you a job tomorrow. Good salary, normal hours, real-world experience. I could feel my dream slipping away. Dad, please just look at the potential return on investment. If this works. If, he emphasized. A very big if. Do you know how many small businesses fail in their first year? And technology changes so fast. By the time you build whatever this is, something better could come along. My mother nodded in agreement. You're 22, Samantha. These should be your best years. Making friends, dating, maybe meeting someone special. Not working all hours on computer things. Tears welled in my eyes. This is my passion. This is what I'm good at. Being good at something doesn't mean you should stake your future on it, my father said firmly. James was good at football, but he didn't try to become a professional athlete. He chose a sensible path. The comparison to my brother was the final straw. I'm not James, I said. My voice cracking. And I never will be. Why can't you support what I want to do instead of what you think I should do? My father's face flushed. Because what you want to do is irresponsible. No daughter of mine will waste her life on this nonsense. We didn't put you through college so you could gamble your future on some computer fantasy. The words hit me like physical blows. I stood up, gathering my presentation with shaking hands. Then I'll do it without your help, I said quietly. That night, crying in my childhood bedroom, I made a promise to myself. I would build my company with or without their support. And one day, they would regret not believing in me. I would become their worst nightmare, successful on my own terms, proving every doubt and dismissal wrong. After graduation, reality set in quickly. I had a prestigious degree, technical skills, and a mountain of student debt. My revolutionary business idea remained just that, an idea, without the startup capital to make it real. I took a job as a junior developer at a small tech startup in Boston. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and loan payments, but it allowed me to stay in the industry. More importantly, it left me with enough mental energy to work on my own project nights and weekends. My apartment was a tiny studio in a less desirable neighborhood with a fold-out couch that doubled as my bed. I shared a bathroom with 3 other tenants on my floor. It wasn't glamorous, but it was all I could afford while trying to save every extra dollar for my business. Each morning, I'd work my day job coding for someone else's vision. Each night, I'd come home and work on my own. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, sleeping 5 hours a night at most. My social life consisted entirely of tech meetups where I might make valuable connections. 6 months into this routine, I met Rachel Bennett at one of these meetups. She was the only other woman in a room full of male developers, and we gravitated toward each other naturally. Rachel worked as a back-end developer at another startup and shared my frustration with the gender dynamics in tech. "Did you see how that guy mansplained basic encryption to me after I mentioned I worked on security protocols?" she asked as we grabbed coffee after the event. I laughed. "At least he talked to you." Half the men here assumed I was someone's girlfriend who got dragged along. Rachel became my first true friend in the professional world. She understood my struggles, both as a developer and as a woman in tech. When I told her about my platform idea, she immediately saw its potential. "You should pitch to investors," she suggested. "This idea is too good to build just in your spare time." With Rachel's encouragement, I refined my pitch and began approaching angel investors and venture capital firms. I quickly discovered that having a good idea wasn't enough, especially for a young female founder with no business track record. My first pitch meeting was a disaster. I sat across from 3 middle-aged men in expensive suits who spent more time looking at their phones than my presentation. When I finished explaining my algorithm, one finally looked up. "Interesting concept. Who's developing the back-end architecture?" "I am," I replied. He exchanged glances with his colleagues. "No technical co-founder?" "No offense, but this is sophisticated stuff. Does your boyfriend or someone help with the development?" I felt my face flush. "I have a computer science degree from MIT. I published a paper on the core algorithm. I don't need a boyfriend to write my code." The meeting went downhill from there. I left without an investment and with my confidence shaken. This scenario repeated itself with variations. Some investors were more polite than others, but the underlying message was consistent. They didn't believe a young woman could build what I was proposing. After 12 rejections, I finally got a meeting with William Hayes, an angel investor known for taking chances on early-stage startups. He listened attentively to my pitch and asked intelligent questions about the technology. For the first time, I felt truly heard. "I like what you're doing," he said at the end of our meeting. "I think there's potential here." My heart soared, until he named his terms, $25,000 for a 40% stake in the company. The offer was insultingly low. It would barely cover 3 months of development costs, and I'd be giving away nearly half my company. When I tried to negotiate, Hayes smiled condescendingly. "Look, this is a generous offer considering the risk. You're unproven, with no business experience and no team. Take it or leave it." I left it. Walking home from that meeting, I made another pivotal decision. I would bootstrap my company myself, starting with the bare minimum. When my tax refund arrived, a whopping $1,200, I used it to incorporate Nexus AI and register a domain name. During this period, my brother James would occasionally call to check in. Our relationship remained cordial but distant. He was rising through the ranks at his financial firm, recently moving into his own apartment and buying a new car, milestones my parents proudly reported to everyone they knew. "How's the computer job?" he asked during one call. "It's fine," I said, not bothering to explain the difference between my day job and my startup efforts. "How's banking?" "Can't complain. Dad and Mom are talking about helping me with a down payment on a condo next year." I'd bit my tongue. They had refused to loan me $50,000 for my business, but were giving James money for real estate. The double standard was glaringly obvious, but pointing it out would only create more family tension. The rare family dinners I attended during this period were exercises in restraint. My parents would ask when I was going to find a real job with benefits and a retirement plan. They'd suggest teaching positions or corporate IT roles, anything more stable than startup life. "Tech companies have layoffs all the time," my father would remind me. "You need something secure." I stopped sharing details of my professional life with them. It was easier to nod along and change the subject than to defend choices they would never understand. The turning point came when I attended a Women in Tech conference and met Elizabeth Gardner, CEO of a successful data analytics company. After her keynote speech, I worked up the courage to approach her during the networking session. "Your talk about perseverance really resonated with me," I told her. "I'm trying to launch a data processing platform, but it's been challenging without support." Something in my story caught her interest, and she invited me to coffee the following week. That 1-hour meeting changed everything. Elizabeth had faced similar obstacles early in her career and had built her company despite them. She reviewed my business plan, tested my prototype, and offered pointed feedback. "Your technology is solid," she said, "but you need to think bigger. This isn't just about data processing, it's about business transformation through data accessibility." With Elizabeth's mentorship, I refined my concept and presentation. She introduced me to contacts and suggested a local startup competition with a $15,000 prize. With nothing to lose, I entered. The night of the competition, I wore the only professional outfit I owned and pitched my heart out. When they announced Nexus AI as the winner, I nearly collapsed from shock and relief. The prize money wasn't enough to fully fund development, but it was enough to believe my dream might actually be possible. I quit my day job the following week, a decision that horrified my parents when they learned about it during Thanksgiving dinner. "You did what?" my father exclaimed. "In this economy, I won a startup competition," I explained. "I'm going to focus on building my company full-time." My mother looked distressed. "But what about health insurance? Your apartment?" "I've calculated my runway," I assured them. "I have enough savings to cover expenses for 6 months, and I've already lined up 2 potential clients." My father shook his head. "This is reckless, Samantha. Absolutely reckless." As I drove back to Boston that night, I made a difficult decision. I needed to limit my contact with my family for a while. Their doubt was a constant drain on my emotional energy, and I needed every ounce of confidence I could muster. I would prove them wrong with results, not arguments. With the competition prize money and my modest savings, I could finally dedicate myself fully to Nexus AI. I rented a tiny office space, really just a desk in a shared workspace, and began developing the first commercial version of my platform. The initial months were grueling. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I coded until my fingers cramped, then switched to making sales calls until my voice grew hoarse. Every minor victory, a bug fixed, a potential client interested, kept me going through the frequent setbacks and moments of doubt. My first real client was a small marketing firm struggling to analyze campaign data. After a demonstration of my prototype, they agreed to a 3-month trial at a reduced rate. They weren't paying much, but having a real business using my software was invaluable for feedback and credibility. When that first client renewed their contract and referred me to another company, I allowed myself a moment of celebration. Then I went right back to work. Word began to spread within certain business circles about the efficient new data platform developed by a young female founder. I landed 3 more clients, then 5 more. Soon, I needed help. I brought on 2 freelance developers to assist with specific features while I focused on the core architecture and client acquisition. As Nexus AI started gaining traction, I made a strategic decision that would shape the next few years of my life. In all my professional communications and marketing materials, I began using only my initials, SL. Davis, rather than my full name. It wasn't just about avoiding gender bias. It was about creating separation between my professional identity and my personal life. I didn't want my family to stumble across my growing success before I was ready to reveal it. The pain of their dismissal was still raw, and some irrational part of me wanted to become undeniably successful before confronting them with the truth. 8 months after going full-time on Nexus AI, I reached another milestone: securing seed funding. A venture capital firm specializing in data startups offered $5 million for a 15% stake, valuing my company at over $33 million. The validation was sweeter than the money itself. With proper funding, Nexus AI transformed rapidly. I hired my first full-time employees, Daniel Ramirez, an exceptional engineer who became my CTO, and Megan Foster, a business development expert who took on the COO role. We moved to a real office in Boston's Tech District and expanded our client base to include medium-sized businesses across multiple industries. When tech publications began requesting interviews with the founder of this promising startup, I maintained my low profile. I used my initials and bylines, avoided photos, and conducted most interviews via phone rather than video. The few necessary publicity photos showed me in shadow or from angles that obscured my face. This semi-anonymity created an unexpected mystique around SL Davis that actually helped the business. People speculated about the reclusive founder with the revolutionary data platform. My gender was assumed male by default, which I neither confirmed nor denied. Meanwhile, my personal life remained entirely disconnected from my professional success. I upgraded to a decent apartment, but kept it modest. When talking to my family, which became increasingly rare, I maintained the fiction that I was working as a mid-level developer at a tech company. "It's going fine," I would tell my mother during our monthly calls. "The hours are reasonable. The pay is good. Have you thought about moving back closer to home?" she would ask. "There are IT jobs in Columbus too." "I'm established in Boston now, Mom. The tech scene here is where I need to be." These conversations felt increasingly surreal as Nexus AI grew to 25 employees, then 50. When we secured Series B funding of $30 million, valuing the company at over $150 million, I celebrated with my team and a small circle of friends who knew the truth, while my family remained completely unaware. The cognitive dissonance became more pronounced when I purchased a luxury condo overlooking the Boston Harbor, a place I could never show my family. When my parents mentioned visiting, I would make excuses or suggest meeting them elsewhere. Around this time, my brother James called with news. He had proposed to his girlfriend Jessica Thompson, a project manager at a tech consulting firm. They were planning an engagement dinner in 2 months, and my presence was non-negotiable according to James. "Mom and Dad really want the whole family there," he insisted. "It's been almost a year since we've all been together." I agreed to attend, even as anxiety built within me. My carefully constructed double life was becoming harder to maintain. Nexus AI had just closed a Series C funding round that valued the company at $250 million. We had over 100 employees. My net worth on paper had reached 9 figures. How long could I pretend to be a regular developer when having dinner with my family? 2 weeks before the engagement dinner, Forbes published a profile of the most innovative companies transforming data science. Nexus AI was featured prominently, with a sidebar about its enigmatic founder, SL Davis. The article included the shadowy photo from our press kit and speculation about why such a successful entrepreneur maintained such privacy. I hadn't expected the profile to run so soon and felt a momentary panic that my family might see it. But my parents didn't read Forbes, and the tech world remained foreign territory to them. My secret appeared safe for now. As the engagement dinner approached, I made careful preparations. I would drive my modest backup car rather than my new Tesla. I would wear conservative clothes that downplayed my success. I would deflect questions about work and focus attention on James and Jessica. I had maintained this charade for years. Surely I could manage one more evening. What I didn't account for was Jessica Thompson herself and the small world of tech professionals that I had come to inhabit. The restaurant James had chosen for his engagement dinner was one of Boston's finest, the kind of establishment where the menu doesn't list prices and the wine list comes in a leather-bound volume. 2 years ago, I couldn't have afforded an appetizer here. Now I owned a significant stake in the restaurant group's data management system. I arrived 15 minutes late, a calculated move to minimize pre-dinner small talk. My parents and James were already seated at a round table draped in crisp white linen, along with an elegant blonde woman I assumed was Jessica. There she is. James stood to hug me. I was beginning to think you'd bail on us. Traffic, I explained, accepting his embrace. Sorry I'm late. My mother inspected me with the critical eye only mothers possess. You look tired, Samantha. Are they working you too hard at that company? I'm fine, Mom. Just busy. I turned to Jessica with a practiced smile. You must be the fiancé I've heard so much about. I'm Samantha. Jessica Thompson was poised and professional in a navy blue dress that spoke of good taste and financial comfort. She extended her hand with a warm smile. It's wonderful to finally meet you. James talks about his brilliant sister all the time. I shot a surprised glance at my brother, who shrugged. What? You are brilliant. Even if you insist on wasting it on coding all day. My father laughed, pouring wine into my glass. James just closed a deal with First Bank yesterday. Youngest broker in his firm to handle an account that size. And so it began, the familiar family dynamic where James's achievements were celebrated while my career was treated as a curious sideline. I sipped my wine and prepared for a long evening. So, Samantha, Jessica said as appetizers arrived, James mentioned you work in tech. What exactly do you do? She's a computer programmer, my father answered before I could speak. Always has been glued to screens, even as a kid. I forced a smile. I work in data processing solutions. Jessica's interest seemed genuine. What kind of solutions? I'm a project manager at Tech Forward Consulting, so I work with developers all the time. My stomach tightened. Tech Forward was a major consulting firm that specialized in implementing data systems for Fortune 500 companies. The kind of firm that might be familiar with Nexus AI. Just back-end systems. I said vaguely. Nothing exciting. Don't be modest, James interjected. She went to MIT. She's the brains in the family. My mother patted his hand. You're plenty smart too, honey. Just in different ways. Jessica wasn't deterred. Which company are you with? We might have crossed paths professionally. It's a small firm, I said. Mostly local clients. Nothing at your scale. Thankfully, the waiter arrived to take our entree orders, providing a momentary distraction. When he asked for my selection, he did a double take. Pardon me. But have you dined with us before? You look very familiar. No, first time, I said quickly. He nodded and moved on, but I noticed Jessica studying me more intently now. The knot in my stomach tightened. As dinner progressed, I deflected personal questions and kept steering the conversation back to James and Jessica, their meeting story, wedding plans, honeymoon destinations. My brother seemed happy to be the center of attention, and my parents beamed with pride as he detailed his recent promotion. What about you, Samantha? My father asked during a lull. Any prospects for advancement at your company? Before I could answer with another vague platitude, Jessica gasped audibly. Her fork clattered against her plate as her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes, fixed on me, widened in apparent shock. Oh my God, she said, loud enough to turn heads at nearby tables. You're S.L. Davis. The table fell silent. My brother looked confused. My parents exchanged glances. SL who? My father asked. Jessica couldn't contain herself. SL Davis. The founder and CEO of Nexus AI. She turned to my family, her voice rising with excitement. Do you know who your daughter is? She's the $250 million CEO we just partnered with. My mother's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. What is she talking about, Samantha? Jessica continued, oblivious to my discomfort. Our firm just signed a 7-figure implementation deal with Nexus AI last month. It's the most innovative data platform on the market. She turned back to me, eyes shining. I was at your keynote speech at the DataCon conference. I didn't make the connection until just now. You were in shadow in all the press photos. The restaurant seemed to go silent around us, though logically I knew conversations were continuing at other tables. My carefully constructed double life was collapsing in spectacular fashion. Samantha. My father's voice was low and confused. What is she talking about? I took a deep breath. There was no going back now. Nexus AI is my company, I said quietly. I founded it 3 years ago. I'm the CEO. James's jaw literally dropped. Your company? The company you own is worth $250 million. My mother looked faint. But you said you were a programmer at a small firm. I am a programmer, I said. And when I started, it was very small. It's grown since then. Jessica seemed to finally register the tension at the table. I'm sorry, did they not know? I just assumed. She trailed off, looking mortified. No, I said, managing a tight smile. They didn't know. My father's face had gone from confused to pale. All this time, you've been running a company? A successful company. Yes, the company that makes the data software? He was struggling to process it. Nexus AI, I confirmed. We develop artificial intelligence solutions for data processing and analysis. The computer games, he said, almost to himself. The thing you wanted to borrow money for after college. That's this company. Yes, Dad. The computer games. Except they were never games. It was always business software. The waiter approached with dessert menus, took one look at our table and wisely retreated. Why didn't you tell us? My mother's voice was hurt. Because you didn't want to hear it. I said, years of suppressed feelings rising to the surface. You dismissed everything I ever did with computers as a waste of time. You refused to loan me startup money because it was just playing games and not a real job. Why would I come back and tell you I succeeded at something you never believed in? We believed in you, my mother protested weakly. No, you believed in a version of me that didn't exist. You wanted me to be a teacher or work at a help desk. You never once took what I was actually doing seriously. My father's expression was unreadable. So, all this time, when you said you were working for a tech company, I own the tech company. I confirmed. I have 120 employees. We just closed a funding round that values Nexus AI at $250 million. James let out a low whistle. Holy shit, Sam. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. I am so sorry. I had no idea this was a secret. It's not your fault, I assured her. It was bound to come out eventually. My father's shock was morphing into something else, a mixture of confusion, pride, and what looked uncomfortably like calculation. $250 million. Samantha, that's incredible. Why wouldn't you share something like that with your family? The question ignited something in me. Why? Are you serious? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You called my work computer games my entire life. You told me no daughter of yours would waste her life on this nonsense. You refused to help me start my business, but gave James money for a condo down payment. And now you're asking why I didn't share my success with you. The surrounding tables had gone quiet. My outburst was creating a scene in this elegant restaurant. I stood up, throwing my napkin on the table. I need some air. Without waiting for a response, I walked rapidly toward the exit. Tears blurring my vision. 3 years of pretending, of carrying the weight of their dismissal alongside the pressure of building a company, it all came crashing down at once. Outside in the cool evening air, I leaned against the restaurant's brick wall, trying to steady my breathing. The door opened behind me, and I expected James or my mother. Instead, it was Jessica. "I am so sorry," she said, genuine distress in her voice. I had no idea I was revealing a secret. In the tech world, everyone knows who you are. I just assumed your family knew too. I managed a small laugh through my tears. "It's really not your fault. It's a bizarre situation entirely of my own making." "For what it's worth," she said hesitantly, "I think what you've built is extraordinary. Your platform revolutionized how we approach client data management. When we implemented Nexus AI at Westridge Financial last month, it uncovered efficiency opportunities worth millions. Under different circumstances, this kind of industry feedback would have thrilled me. Now it just underscored the absurdity of my double life." "Thank you," I said sincerely, "and congratulations on your engagement." James is lucky to have found someone so supportive. The restaurant door opened again, and this time it was my brother. "Mom and Dad are asking for the check," he said quietly. "I think we should call it a night." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I'm sorry I ruined your engagement dinner." He shook his head. "You didn't ruin anything. This is a lot to process, but it's not bad news, Sam. It's amazing news that got delivered in an awkward way." James had always been the diplomat of the family. "I should talk to them," I said, though the prospect filled me with dread. "Not tonight," he advised. "Everyone's too emotional right now. Let it settle." As we walked back inside to say stilted goodbyes, I knew nothing would ever be the same with my family again. The truth was out, messy and unplanned. The carefully maintained wall between my professional success and personal history had crumbled completely. Driving home to my Harborview condo in my backup car, I felt an odd mixture of relief and anxiety. The burden of secrecy was lifted, but the real conversations, the difficult ones about years of dismissal and deception, were still to come. The morning after the disastrous engagement dinner, I woke to 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from my mother, ranging from confused, "Please call me," "We need to talk," to hurt, "How could you keep this from us for years," to oddly proud. My friend Marion's son works in computers too, but I bet he doesn't have his own company. James had texted a simple, "They're freaking out. Call when you're ready." My father, predictably, had not reached out directly. I was still processing my own emotions over breakfast when my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw James standing in the hallway, looking tired and determined. When I opened the door, his eyes widened as he took in my apartment for the first time, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, the minimalist high-end furniture, the original artwork on the walls. "So this is how the other half lives," he said with a low whistle. "Nice upgrade from that closet you were renting after college." "Come in," I said, ignoring his comment. "Coffee?" He nodded, following me to the kitchen. "I told Mom and Dad I had a morning meeting in the city, so I could come check on you." "They've been beside themselves." "I imagine they have a lot of questions," I said, handing him a mug. "That's putting it mildly." He took a sip and leaned against the counter. "Why, Sam? Why the secrecy?" "I get not telling them at first, but 3 years? A $250 million company." I sat at my breakfast bar, gathering my thoughts. It wasn't a deliberate plan. At first, I was just trying to prove I could do it without them, after they refused to support me. Then, when success started coming, it felt like I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of suddenly being interested, just because there was money involved. James frowned. "That's not fair." "They would have been proud regardless." "Would they?" "When I was working 16-hour days coding in a terrible apartment, they called it a waste of time. When I told them I was starting a company, Dad said, and I quote, 'No daughter of mine will waste her life on this nonsense.'" "They didn't understand what you were building," he argued. "They didn't try to understand. I countered. They dismissed it because it didn't fit their idea of what I should be doing. You never had that problem. Your path always made sense to them. He sighed, looking genuinely troubled. I didn't realize how different our experiences were. To me, they always seemed supportive of both of us. That's because they were always supportive of you, I said without rancor. Your choices aligned with their values. Mine didn't. We talked for another hour, really talked, in a way we hadn't since childhood. James admitted he'd always been slightly jealous of my intelligence, while I confessed to envying the easy relationship he had with our parents. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. They want to see you, he said finally. They're hurting and confused, but also, I think they're trying to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with this successful CEO stranger. I'm still the same person, I said. Are you? The sister I knew wouldn't have lived a double life for years. His words stung because they held truth. Success had changed me. And so had the pain of rejection. I'll talk to them, I promised. But I need a day to prepare. After James left, I spent hours thinking about what I wanted from a relationship with my parents moving forward. Could we build something new from the ashes of misunderstanding? Or was the damage too deep? 2 days later, I drove to my childhood home in Columbus. This time, I took my Tesla and didn't try to downplay my success. If we were going to start fresh, it would be with complete honesty. My mother opened the door before I could knock, engulfing me in a tearful hug. My father stood awkwardly in the living room, looking older than I remembered. You're here, my mother said, wiping her eyes. We have so much to talk about. The living room was painfully familiar. The same furniture, the same family photos on the walls. Pictures of James and me at various ages, smiling as if we shared the same experience of growing up in this house. I brought something, I said, pulling out my tablet. I think we should start by getting everything on the table. For the next 30 minutes, I showed them articles about Nexus AI, industry awards we'd won, and photos of our offices and team. I explained what my company actually did in terms they could understand. I showed them the valuation reports and what my ownership stake meant. My mother alternated between amazement and hurt. All those times you said you were just working at a tech company. I know. I'm sorry for the deception. My father had remained mostly silent, but now he cleared his throat. Why didn't you tell us when things started taking off? We're your parents, Samantha. Because I didn't think you'd care, I said bluntly. You never cared about my work before. That's not true, he protested. We always supported your education, your interests. No, Dad. You tolerated them. There's a difference. I pulled up an old photo of me at 17, proudly showing the check from my first app sale. Do you remember what you said when I showed you this? He looked uncomfortable. It was a long time ago. You said it was nice pocket money, but not a career path. It was just a hobby. I didn't understand what you were doing, he admitted. Computers weren't my generation's strength. You understood enough to know James's internship at the bank was valuable. You understood enough to suggest I take a help desk job instead of starting my company. You understood what you wanted to understand. My mother intervened. We just wanted security for you, a stable future. And you couldn't imagine that I might find that on my own path rather than the one you chose for me. The conversation was painful but necessary. For hours, we unpacked years of misunderstandings and hurt feelings. I didn't spare them the details of how deeply their dismissal had wounded me, while they expressed their confusion and hurt at my secrecy. We would have been proud, my mother insisted, if we'd known what you were building. Would you? Or would you only have become proud once it was successful? Because there's a difference between supporting someone's journey and just applauding when they reach the destination. My father, to his credit, seemed to be genuinely reflecting on his role in our estrangement. I might have been wrong, he said finally. About your work, about what you were capable of. I didn't see the potential because I didn't understand the field. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my proud father, it was significant. The conversation was interrupted by James and Jessica arriving. My brother had obviously timed their visit to help defuse tensions if needed. Jessica looked mortified to face me again, but I greeted her warmly. I brought reinforcements, James joked weakly. How's it going? We're talking, I said. Really talking, maybe for the first time. Jessica's perspective as an outsider proved unexpectedly valuable. From a professional standpoint, she told my parents, what Samantha has accomplished is extraordinary. The majority of startups fail. To build a company valued at $250 million in 3 years is almost unheard of, especially for a solo female founder. Her validation carried weight that mine couldn't. She understood the tech world in a way my parents never would, and they respected her as James's chosen partner. The irony, she added, is that I've been trying to arrange a meeting with S.L. Davis for months. My firm considers Nexus AI a vital strategic partner. And she was your daughter all along. My father shook his head in disbelief. Our daughter, he said quietly. Who used to sit in her room typing away at what we thought were games. They were never games, I reminded him gently. I was building. Always building. Before leaving that evening, I set clear boundaries for our relationship moving forward. I want you in my life, I told them, but I need your respect, not just your pride in my financial success. My mother promised to try. My father, in his own way, did too. It wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning. As I prepared to drive back to Boston, Jessica pulled me aside. I know things are complicated with your family, but I'd like us to be friends, if that's possible. Not because of your company or who you are in the tech world, but because you're James's sister and you seem like someone worth knowing. Her genuine warmth touched me. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. The drive back gave me time to reflect. Revealing my success hadn't magically healed old wounds, but it had lanced them, allowing the process of real healing to begin. My parents might never fully understand my world, but perhaps they could learn to respect it. And perhaps I could learn to forgive their limitations while appreciating their strengths. It wouldn't happen overnight, but for the first time in years, it seemed possible. 6 months after the revelation at James and Jessica's engagement dinner, Nexus AI continued its meteoric growth. We expanded internationally, opening offices in London and Singapore alongside our Boston headquarters. Our client list included Fortune 100 companies and cutting-edge startups alike. A recent acquisition offer had valued the company at over $500 million, which I politely declined. This was still just the beginning. My relationship with my family had entered a new phase, not perfect, but evolving in promising ways. My father had made the most surprising transformation. He'd started reading tech publications, subscribing to newsletters about the industry, and even taking a basic coding class at the community college just to understand the fundamentals. I want to know what you built, he explained when I expressed surprise. Even if I can never fully understand it, I want to try. My mother had shifted from dismissal to almost excessive pride. She now mentioned my company to virtually everyone she met, sometimes to my embarrassment. Karen was just telling us about your daughter's amazing computer business. Her friend Margaret told me during a visit home. She says you're the next Steve Jobs. Mom, please stop telling people I'm the next Steve Jobs, I said later. It sets unrealistic expectations. She patted my hand. I'm just proud of you, honey. I should have been all along. James and Jessica had become unexpected allies in bridging the gap between my professional and personal worlds. Jessica's technical background allowed her to appreciate what I'd built, while James made genuine efforts to understand the significance of my work. The bank is actually implementing a system similar to yours, he told me during a Sunday phone call. Not as good, obviously, but it made me realize how what you do affects every industry now, even traditional ones like finance. The most meaningful change came 3 months after our confrontation when my parents attended Nexus AI's annual client conference in Boston. I had hesitated to invite them. worried they would feel out of place in the technical environment, but James encouraged me to extend the offer. Let them see your world, he suggested. Even if they don't understand all of it, they should see what you've built. Watching my parents enter the convention center where 2,000 people had gathered to learn about our platform was surreal. They sat in the front row during my keynote address, my mother beaming with visible pride. My father listening with intense concentration despite surely understanding only a fraction of the technical content. At the reception afterward, I introduced them to my executive team and key clients. Seeing them shake hands with people who respected me professionally helped heal something deep within me. For the first time, my two worlds were colliding in a positive way. That evening, my father asked for a private word on the hotel balcony. I want to say something, he began awkwardly. Something I should have said months ago, maybe years ago. I waited, unsure what was coming. I was wrong, Samantha, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Wrong to dismiss what you were doing. Wrong to push you toward what I thought was best instead of supporting what you were passionate about. And I'm sorry. The words I'd waited so long to hear nearly brought me to tears. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot. I was raised to believe in certain paths to success, he continued. College, then a stable job with benefits and a pension. That's what security meant in my world. I couldn't see how typing on a computer could lead to anything substantial because it didn't fit my understanding of work. I know, I said softly. Our generations see things differently. But that's no excuse, he insisted. A good parent supports their child's dreams, even when they don't understand them. I failed you there, and I have to live with that. We talked for nearly an hour on that balcony, having the honest conversation we should have had years ago. He asked thoughtful questions about my journey, showing genuine interest in understanding not just my success, but the struggles that preceded it. I wish I had been there for you during the hard times, he said. Not just showing up to celebrate once you'd already succeeded. You're here now, I told him. That's what matters going forward. The healing process with my family continued gradually. We started monthly family video calls where I would share company updates and they would actually listen with interest. My mother framed the Forbes article about Nexus AI and hung it prominently in their living room. My father occasionally sent me articles about the tech industry with his thoughts. The most tangible symbol of our evolving relationship came when I decided to establish a scholarship fund for young women pursuing computer science degrees. I named it after my grandmother, who had always encouraged my curiosity even when she didn't understand my interests. We'd like to contribute, my father said when I mentioned the scholarship during a family dinner. It won't be much compared to what you're putting in, but we want to be part of it. Their contribution wasn't large financially, but symbolically it meant everything. They were investing in other girls with dreams like mine had been. Jessica became an unexpected ally in my personal life as well as professionally. As a woman in tech herself, she understood many of my experiences firsthand. We began meeting for coffee regularly, forming a friendship independent of my brother. You know what amazes me most about your story? She said during one of our meetups. Not the success itself, impressive as it is, but your resilience. The ability to believe in yourself when no one else did. Her observation made me reflect on the most important lesson of my journey. External validation, while nice, cannot be the foundation of self-belief. I had learned to trust my vision even when those closest to me questioned it. 2 years after the revelation at the engagement dinner, Nexus AI had grown to over 300 employees with offices in 5 countries. We were preparing for a potential IPO that analysts suggested could value the company at over $1 billion. The business press had taken to calling me the Data Duchess, a nickname I found simultaneously flattering and cringe-inducing. My relationship with my parents had reached a new equilibrium. We would never be as close as some families, and certain old wounds would always leave scars, but we had found a way forward based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I'm thinking of opening a development center in Columbus, I told them during a visit home. It would make it easier to see you more often. My mother's eyes lit up. You would do that? The talent pool is growing there, I said. It makes business sense, but yes, being closer to family is a factor too. My father nodded appreciatively, understanding that I was extending an olive branch while maintaining my independence. The journey from being the girl whose parents dismissed her passion as computer games to becoming a CEO they bragged about had been long and often painful. But it had taught me invaluable lessons about perseverance, self-belief, and the complicated nature of family love. Not every parent can see the potential in paths they don't understand. Not every dream receives the support it deserves. But that doesn't mean you should abandon it. Sometimes, the dreams others dismiss most readily are precisely the ones worth fighting for. As I look toward the future, both for Nexus AI and for my personal relationships, I carry these lessons with me. Success is sweetest when it comes on your own terms. But reconciliation brings a different kind of fulfillment that balance sheets can never capture. The girl who once coded alone in her bedroom while her parents wished she would do something productive now leads a company transforming how businesses understand their data. The daughter whose technical interests were dismissed now signs her parents' checks for the scholarship fund, helping other young women pursue similar paths. Life has a way of bringing these full-circle moments if you stay true to your vision long enough. What's your story? Have you ever had your passion dismissed by those closest to you? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about overcoming obstacles and finding success on your own terms. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the dreams others dismiss may be exactly the ones worth fighting hardest for. My name is Samantha Mitchell, but everyone calls me Sam. I just turned 28 last month. I never thought I would be forced to choose between the man I loved and saving my family from financial ruin. As a physical therapist, I dedicated my life to helping others heal. But I never expected my professional skills would lead me to an arranged marriage with a paralyzed man and the shocking secret he was hiding. Before I dive into how my life turned upside down, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories about impossible choices and shocking revelations. I grew up in a close-knit family in a small town outside of Boston. We weren't wealthy, but my parents, Harold and Elizabeth Mitchell, always made sure we had what we needed. My father worked for 30 years at a manufacturing company, slowly climbing his way up to middle management. My mother stayed home to care for my younger brother Ethan, who was born with cerebral palsy and required constant attention. Our family was traditional in many ways. My parents believed in hard work, family loyalty, and that children should respect their elders without question. They sacrificed everything for us, especially for Ethan, whose medical needs were extensive and expensive. Despite his challenges, Ethan was the light of our family, with his brilliant mind and infectious laugh. Everything changed when my father was laid off at 57. The company was downsizing. And despite his decades of loyalty, Dad was just another name on a spreadsheet to the new corporate owners. The timing couldn't have been worse. Mom had just been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, requiring expensive medication that our insurance barely covered. "We will figure something out," Dad would say during dinner, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The Mitchell family always lands on their feet. But I could see the worry lines deepening on his forehead each month as the bills piled higher. By the time I finished my physical therapy degree and started working at Boston Memorial Hospital, our family was drowning in over $250,000 of debt. The medical bills, the second mortgage they had taken out for Ethan's treatments, and the credit cards they had maxed out just to keep our heads above water were crushing them. I tried to help as much as I could. My starting salary as a physical therapist wasn't enormous, but I gave them half my paycheck every month. I lived in a tiny apartment with a roommate to keep expenses down. I clipped coupons, skipped vacations, and worked overtime whenever possible. But it was like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. Through all this struggle, Ryan was my rock. We had been together for 4 years after meeting in college. He was training to become a doctor, and though his residency hours were brutal, he always found time for me. He understood my family obligations and never complained when I had to cancel dates to help with Ethan or when I couldn't join weekend trips because I needed to save money. "I love you, Sam," he would tell me, his brown eyes warm and sincere. "Your big heart is one of the reasons I fell for you. Your family is part of who you are." We had plans for the future. After his residency, when he would finally start making a real doctor's salary, we would get married. We talked about buying a house with an in-law suite where my parents and Ethan could live if needed. We dreamed of building a life where everyone would be taken care of. But dreams don't pay bills, and reality came crashing down when the bank sent the foreclosure notice. My parents had 30 days to come up with $50,000 or lose our family home, the home where Ethan needed the special equipment and modifications we had spent years installing. That's when the Turners entered our lives. William and Catherine Turner were Boston aristocracy. Their family had old money and new connections, owning several medical facilities throughout New England, including a rehabilitation center affiliated with my hospital. Their son, Marcus Turner, had been in a car accident 5 years earlier, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. At 32, he was handsome in a polished way, with carefully styled dark hair and expensive clothes that couldn't quite hide the wheelchair he used. The Turners approached my parents with a proposition that seemed to come from another century. They wanted Marcus to marry a nice girl from a good family who also happened to be a healthcare professional. They had noticed me during one of Marcus's therapy sessions and decided I fit their requirements. In exchange for the marriage, they would give my family $600,000 immediately, enough to pay off all debts and secure Ethan's care for years to come. My parents rejected the idea immediately. "We could never sell our daughter like that," Mom told me, horrified. But as the foreclosure date loomed closer and Ethan's special therapy program threatened to drop him due to missed payments, their resolve weakened. "Just meet him," Dad suggested one evening. Not meeting my eyes. What could it hurt? I agreed to one dinner, mostly to stop their gentle pressure. The Turners hosted us at their mansion in Beacon Hill, a building that could have housed 20 families from our neighborhood. Marcus was polite but distant, asking rehearsed questions about my work and interests. I noticed how his parents answered for him frequently, as though he were a child instead of a grown man. As weeks passed and our financial situation grew more desperate, my parents stopped pretending this was just about me meeting a nice man. "Think of Ethan," Mom whispered one night, tears in her eyes. "Where will he go if we lose the house?" "Those group homes are terrible, Sam. You know what happens to kids like him in those places." Dad was more direct. "Sometimes love is a luxury we can't afford, sweetheart. Your mother and I married for love, and look where it got us." Maybe the old way, where families made practical matches, had some wisdom to it. Their words felt like weights around my neck, slowly dragging me under. I fought against the arrangement for weeks. Every fiber of my being rebelled against the idea of marrying someone I didn't love, especially when my heart belonged to Ryan. But with each passing day, my family's situation grew more desperate. Ethan's medical provider threatened to discontinue his physical therapy due to unpaid bills. My mother skipped her own medication to pay for his instead, causing her condition to worsen until she could barely hold a cup without pain. When I saw my strong, proud father break down in tears after receiving the final foreclosure notice, something inside me broke too. I invited Ryan to my apartment to tell him. I had rehearsed what to say, but when I saw his face light up as he entered, all my carefully prepared words abandoned me. "I can't marry you," I blurted out, tears already forming. His smile vanished. "What are you talking about, Sam?" I explained everything through sobs. The Turners, their offer, my family's desperation. Ryan listened, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to anger. This is insane, he said, pacing my small living room. We're not living in some Victorian novel. You can't sell yourself to save your family. What choice do I have? I asked. You're still years away from finishing your residency. The bank won't give us any more loans. Ethan needs specialized care that costs thousands every month. We'll figure something out, Ryan insisted. I can ask my parents for help. Or I could drop out of the residency program. Get a regular job that pays now instead of later. And give up your dream of becoming a surgeon? I can't let you do that. But you can give up your dream of us being together? His voice cracked with emotion. We stayed up all night discussing alternatives. Ryan called friends in banking to ask about loan options. I contacted social services again about programs for Ethan. We looked up bankruptcy laws and medical charity organizations. But each potential solution had a fatal flaw, was too slow to implement, or wouldn't provide enough assistance. I could speak to the Turners, Ryan suggested desperately as dawn broke. Maybe I could work for their medical facilities to repay whatever they give your family. They don't want money from us, I explained. They want their son to have a respectable marriage with someone who understands his medical needs. It's about appearances for them. The argument continued for days. Ryan alternated between anger, bargaining, and heartbreaking sadness. He showed up at my workplace with flowers and alternative plans. He even confronted my parents, who listened sympathetically but remained firm in their belief that this was the only way forward. Finally, on a rainy Sunday afternoon, we met one last time in the park where we had our first date. The rain seemed fitting as we sat on a bench under his umbrella, both emotionally exhausted. I will always love you, I told him, my voice barely audible over the pattering raindrops. Then don't do this, he pleaded, taking my hands in his. We can make it work, Sam. Love should count for something. It does. My love for my family counts too. His face hardened then, an expression I had never seen on his gentle features. You're choosing money over love. I hope it's worth it. Those words haunted me as I watched him walk away, shoulders hunched against the rain and the weight of our broken dreams. The next week, I met Marcus Turner again, this time alone. We had coffee at an upscale cafe where the staff clearly knew him well. Up close, I noticed details I had missed before. His hands were calloused in odd places for someone who used a wheelchair. His upper body was extraordinarily developed, with muscles straining against his designer shirt. When he thought I wasn't looking, his expression shifted from polite interest to calculating assessment. My parents tell me you've agreed to the arrangement, he said, stirring his espresso. I'm considering it, I corrected. I have questions first. He nodded, seeming almost bored. Of course, though I should mention the offer is time-sensitive. We have other candidates if you're not interested. The casual way he mentioned other candidates made my skin crawl, but I pushed forward. What exactly would this marriage entail? Would we live together? Would you expect physical intimacy? Marcus laughed, a sharp sound without humor. We would maintain separate bedrooms. I have certain physical limitations, as you know. As for living arrangements, you would move into the east wing of my parents' home. You would accompany me to social functions, assist with my physical therapy routine, and generally maintain appearances as my devoted wife. In return, your family receives financial security, and you get to live a very comfortable life. Something in his tone seemed off, but I was too overwhelmed to analyze it further. I left our meeting with a sense of unease I couldn't quite name, but the reality of my family's situation drowned out my instinctive concerns. The wedding preparations moved at a dizzying pace. The Turners hired Boston's most exclusive wedding planner and gave her just 3 months to create what Catherine Turner described as the social event of the season. I had no say in the flowers, white orchids imported from Thailand, the venue, the historic Trinity Church followed by a reception at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, or even my dress, a custom Vera Wang creation that cost more than my annual salary. While the Turners orchestrated the spectacle, I sank deeper into depression. I went through each day on autopilot, nodding and smiling when appropriate, but feeling nothing. Friends stopped calling after I declined enough invitations. I lost weight until my wedding dress had to be taken in 3 times. The only thing that kept me going was seeing the relief on my parents' faces when the Turners' lawyers handed them the first installment check. Enough to stop the foreclosure and pay off the most pressing medical bills. "You're saving us all," Mom whispered during a dress fitting, her eyes bright with tears. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but you're giving Ethan a chance at a better life." The wedding day arrived with perfect early summer weather. As I stood in the bridal suite of the hotel, attendants fussing with my veil and makeup, I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked like a porcelain doll, beautiful but empty. Ryan didn't come to the ceremony, though I had sent him an invitation out of some masochistic impulse. Several coworkers attended, looking uncomfortable as they witnessed my surrender to this loveless arrangement. The church was otherwise filled with the Turners' social circle. People who whispered behind jeweled hands about the gold digger marrying into their elite world. Marcus played his part perfectly during the ceremony, looking up at me from his wheelchair with a practiced expression of adoration. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, he reached for my hand and kissed it gently. To the hundreds of guests, we must have looked like a beautiful story of love overcoming adversity. The reality set in quickly after the honeymoon. A week in the Turners' private villa in the Maldives where Marcus and I stayed in separate rooms and barely spoke. Upon our return, I moved into the east wing of the Turner mansion, a labyrinthine building with more rooms than I could count. My daily routine took shape. Mornings began with assisting Marcus's physical therapy sessions in the home gym, though I quickly noticed he needed far less help than expected for someone with his condition. Afternoons were spent accompanying him to medical appointments or social engagements where I smiled silently as he charmed Boston society. Evenings found me alone in my suite of rooms, staring at the ceiling and wondering how my life had come to this. The Turner household staff treated me with a strange mixture of pity and suspicion. The housekeeper, Mrs. Jenkins, occasionally gave me sympathetic glances when no one was looking. The butler, Richardson, maintained a frosty formality that never warmed even after months in residence. "Mrs. Turner," he would say, the title still jarring to my ears. "Mr. Marcus requests your presence at dinner tonight. The elder Mr. and Mrs. Turner will be joining you." Dinners with my in-laws were excruciating exercises in pretense. William and Catherine Turner maintained their public performance of welcoming me to the family while subtly reminding me of my place in their hierarchy. "Samantha, dear," Catherine would say, "perhaps you could wear the blue dress tonight? The green doesn't quite suit your complexion." Or William would comment, "We must work on your tennis serve if you're to join the club tournament next season." The Turner name has a reputation to maintain. Marcus himself was an enigma. In public, he played the devoted husband, holding my hand and speaking adoringly about my amazing wife, the healthcare angel who stole my heart. In private, he was distant and often absent, disappearing for hours into his private study or taking mysterious phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. 1 month into our marriage, I noticed the first truly odd behavior. After believing Marcus had gone to bed, I went to the kitchen for tea and glimpsed him through the garden doors, maneuvering his wheelchair across the lawn with remarkable speed. When he reached the pool house, he looked around carefully before doing something I couldn't quite see from my vantage point. But the motion looked suspiciously like standing up. I convinced myself I was seeing things, that my desire to find something wrong with this arrangement was making me imagine impossible scenarios. But more inconsistencies began to appear. Marcus's wheelchair was sometimes left in odd locations, as though forgotten. During a rainstorm, I found him completely dry despite supposedly having just come in from the garden. Most tellingly, I noticed his legs had muscle tone that seemed unusual for someone paralyzed for 5 years. 3 months into our marriage, I discovered a locked room adjacent to Marcus's bedroom. When I asked about it, he dismissed my question with unusual sharpness. "That's private, Sam. Some places in this house are still mine alone." The same week, I overheard him speaking on the phone in his study, the door slightly ajar. "We need to be more careful," he was saying, his voice low and urgent. "She's starting to notice things." "No, Jennifer. I don't think she suspects the whole truth, but she's asking questions. Just a few more months and the insurance verification period will be complete." I pulled back from the door, heart racing. Who was Jennifer? What insurance verification? And most importantly, what was the whole truth Marcus thought I might discover? By our 4th month of marriage, my suspicions had grown from occasional doubts to a constant undercurrent of distrust. I began paying closer attention to Marcus's movements and routines, looking for patterns or inconsistencies that might explain the strange things I'd observed. The most revealing moments came when Marcus thought no one was watching. During a garden party hosted by the Turners, I stepped inside to help Mrs. Jenkins with a tray of champagne flutes. Through the window, I saw Marcus speaking to the gardener. His tone harsh and expression cruel, completely different from his public persona. When the elderly man turned away, Marcus made a subtle shifting movement in his wheelchair that looked almost like he was stopping himself from standing up in anger. Another incident occurred during a thunderstorm when the power went out. I heard a crash from Marcus's wing and rushed over with a flashlight, concerned he might have fallen. I found him in his bathroom, half standing and bracing himself against the sink before he quickly dropped back into his wheelchair upon seeing me. "The wheel slipped," he explained quickly. I was trying to keep from falling, but his explanation couldn't account for what I'd seen. His legs had been bearing weight, if only for a moment. The locked room continued to nag at my curiosity. One afternoon, while Marcus was supposedly at a doctor's appointment, I searched his study for keys. In a hidden desk compartment, I found a small silver key labeled private. My hands trembled as I made my way to the forbidden door. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside was what appeared to be a physical therapy room more advanced than anything in the main house gym. There were specialized equipment pieces I recognized from my professional training, but also walking bars, leg press machines, and balance trainers that would be useless to someone truly paralyzed from the waist down. Most damning was a treadmill with recent wear marks and a notebook beside it recording times and distances. I quickly took photos with my phone before relocking the room, my mind racing with implications. Why would Marcus maintain this secret room? Why pretend to be permanently wheelchair-bound if he was actually regaining mobility? The mysterious weekly therapy sessions Marcus attended alone became my next focus. According to the household schedule, every Thursday afternoon Marcus visited his specialist, Dr. Gregory Turner, for private rehabilitation. The doctor's name had struck me as familiar when I first heard it, but it took research to confirm my suspicion. Gregory Turner was Marcus's cousin, not just his physician. I decided to follow Marcus to one of these appointments. I told Mrs. Jenkins I had a headache and would be resting in my room, then slipped out through the service entrance and took a taxi to the medical building. From across the street, I watched Marcus arrive in his specialized van. The driver helped him into his wheelchair and then left. Marcus waited until the van pulled away before wheeling himself to the side entrance. I expected him to go inside, but instead, a woman emerged from the building and joined him. She was tall and elegant, with long dark hair, and she leaned down to kiss Marcus with obvious familiarity. Not a medical professional's greeting, but a lover's kiss. They spoke for a few minutes before both entering the building. I crossed the street and found a coffee shop with a view of the entrance, settling in for what might be a long wait. 2 hours later, they emerged together. The woman looked around cautiously before Marcus slowly, but definitely, stood from the wheelchair. With her hand on his arm for support, he walked stiffly but unmistakably to a car parked nearby. The wheelchair was folded and placed in the trunk before they drove away together. My hands shook so badly I could barely take pictures with my phone. Marcus was walking. My supposedly paralyzed husband could walk. When I returned home, I went straight to my room and began searching online for everything I could find about the Turner family. News articles about Marcus's accident 5 years ago described a devastating spinal injury and quoted doctors predicting he might never walk again. But the phrasing suddenly seemed careful, leaving room for improvement that was never publicly acknowledged. I also discovered financial records showing a $5 million insurance policy payout for permanent disability, with annual verification required for the first 7 years. We were in year 5 of that verification period. The final piece fell into place when I found a photo in a society page from 10 years ago, before the accident. Marcus stood with his arm around a familiar woman at a charity gala. The caption identified her as Jennifer Blackwood, daughter of Senator James Blackwood, with boyfriend Marcus Turner. It was the same woman I had seen at the medical building. That night at dinner, I decided to test my growing theory. William and Catherine were dining out, leaving Marcus and me alone at the massive dining table. I was thinking, I said casually, pushing food around my plate, that maybe I could accompany you to your therapy session next week. As a physical therapist, I might have some insights that could help your progress. Marcus froze momentarily before continuing to cut his steak. That won't be necessary. Gregory has his own methods that are working well. It's just that I noticed some improvement in your muscle tone recently. It made me wonder if you're experiencing any sensation or movement that might indicate healing. His eyes snapped to mine, suddenly cold and calculating. What exactly are you suggesting, Sam? Nothing, I backpedaled. Just professional curiosity. Let me be clear, he said, setting down his knife with precision. My medical care is private. Your role is to support me publicly and maintain our arrangement. Don't overstep. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. That night, I heard him on the phone again, his voice agitated. She knows something. No, I can't just get rid of her. There's the contract with her family. We need to be more careful until the final verification. I lay awake until dawn, planning my next move. I needed concrete proof before confronting Marcus or his family. Whatever game they were playing, I was now determined to expose it. 6 months into our sham marriage, I decided I couldn't live with the deception any longer. I needed irrefutable evidence of Marcus's fraud, both for my own sanity and to protect myself from whatever getting rid of her might entail. I formulated a plan that would force Marcus to reveal his true physical capabilities. The Turner family pool had an advanced lift system installed after Marcus's accident, allowing him to enjoy swimming without assistance. One Monday morning when the staff had their weekly meeting and Marcus's parents were in New York, I disabled the pool lift's safety features and then invited Marcus to join me for a swim. It's a beautiful day, I suggested with forced cheerfulness. The doctor said swimming would be good for your circulation. Marcus agreed reluctantly, wheeling himself to the pool deck while I pretended to check the water temperature. As he positioned his chair near the lift, I gasped and pointed to the far end of the pool. Is that a crack in the deep end? The pool might be leaking. While Marcus looked where I was pointing, I subtly activated the lift. It began moving his chair toward the water, but without the safety locks, the chair tilted precariously. Sam, Marcus shouted as the wheelchair began to tip toward the water. The stabilizers aren't working. I stepped back, watching with calculated calmness. That's strange. Should I call for help? The chair tilted further, now at a 45-degree angle over the water. Marcus looked from the pool to me, panic and then fury crossing his face as he realized I had set him up. In one fluid motion, he pushed himself from the chair, landed firmly on both feet, and stepped away from the edge of the pool. You bitch, he snarled. standing completely upright on the legs he had claimed were useless. You could have killed me. I held up my phone, which had been recording the entire scene. Paralyzed men don't usually land on their feet, Marcus. His face contorted with rage, but seeing the phone, he quickly composed himself. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, I countered, keeping distance between us. You're committing insurance fraud. You've been pretending to be paralyzed for 5 years to collect millions in disability payments. And you married me, a physical therapist, to help validate your condition to the insurance company. Marcus stared at me for a long moment before his posture relaxed and an eerie smile spread across his face. Well, the desperate little gold digger turned out to have a brain after all. How much of it was fake? I demanded. The accident? The injury. He walked to a pool chair and sat down casually. The movement slightly stiff, but unmistakably that of a man who had been walking for some time. The accident was real enough. Drunk driver hit my car. I had a spinal contusion and temporary paralysis. The doctors said I would likely recover in a year or 2 with intensive therapy. But you saw an opportunity, I guessed. 5 million reasons to stay in a wheelchair, he confirmed with a shrug. The insurance policy paid out for permanent disability. All I needed was to maintain the charade until the contestability period ended. And Jennifer? She's been your girlfriend this whole time. His eyebrows rose in surprise. You know about Jennifer? You've been busier than I thought. Yes, Jennifer Blackwood has been my partner for 8 years. She's been very patient with this arrangement. So your parents know? They helped orchestrate this whole fraud. Of course they know. The Turners protect their own. When I realized I was regaining sensation, Dad brought in Cousin Gregory to manage my care off the books. We've been careful, bringing in only family members who can be trusted. Until you. Why me? Why marriage? Marcus leaned forward, his expression calculating. The final insurance verification requires extensive medical documentation. We needed someone with healthcare credentials who could vouch for my condition. Someone with a compelling reason to stay quiet. My mother suggested marriage after seeing you at the hospital. Your family's financial troubles made you the perfect candidate. Desperate, qualified, and easily controlled. The cold precision of their plan made me nauseated. My entire life had been derailed as a small piece in their elaborate fraud scheme. What happens now? I asked. Still recording. That depends on you, Marcus replied smoothly. You have evidence that could cause problems for my family. We have a contract that's keeping your family afloat. I think we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. You want me to keep quiet about your fraud. In exchange for the remaining money promised to your family, yes. Walk away quietly. Divorce me citing irreconcilable differences, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and everyone gets what they want. Your family stays financially secure, and I complete my verification period next year. And if I refuse? His smile disappeared. Then your family gets nothing more from us. The initial payment would be considered fulfilled obligation. I doubt they've set aside much for future expenses, have they? How long before they're facing foreclosure again? How long before your brother loses his specialized care? Would exposing me be worth watching your family suffer? I turned off the recording and slipped the phone into my pocket. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, Marcus said, standing up and walking steadily to retrieve his wheelchair. But remember what's at stake. Your moral outrage won't pay your brother's medical bills. I watched him settle back into the chair, transforming instantly into the helpless, paralyzed man the world believed him to be. The performance was flawless, practiced over years of deception. As he wheeled himself back toward the house, I remained by the pool, shaking with a combination of rage and uncertainty about what to do next. The next morning, I packed a small bag and left the Turner mansion while Marcus was at his therapy session. I needed space to think and people I could trust. I drove to my parents' home, the modest house they had managed to keep thanks to the Turners' blood money. Mom was watering plants in the front yard when I arrived, her face lighting up at the unexpected visit. Sam, what a lovely surprise. Is everything okay? I waited until we were inside, my father and Ethan joining us in the living room, before I connected my phone to their television and played the video of Marcus walking and confessing. Their reactions progressed from confusion to shock to horror as the full extent of the deception became clear. Mom covered her mouth with trembling hands while Dad's face flushed dark red with anger. "Those manipulative bastards," he growled. "They used our situation to make you part of their crime." "What are you going to do?" Mom asked quietly. It was the question I had been wrestling with since leaving the mansion. "I don't know yet. Marcus made it clear that if I expose him, you won't get the rest of the money. Can you manage without it?" My parents exchanged glances, a silent communication born from decades together. Dad nodded slightly and Mom turned to me with resolve in her eyes. "We survived before the Turners, and we can survive after them. We won't have our daughter live a lie for our benefit." "But Ethan's treatments," I protested. My brother, who had been listening silently from his specialized wheelchair, spoke up. "I don't want you to sacrifice your life for my medical bills. Sam, that's not fair to anyone." His words broke something inside me, releasing the tears I had been holding back. "I just wanted to help our family." "And you did," Dad assured me, squeezing my shoulder. "The money they've already paid has eliminated our most pressing debts. We can figure out the rest together, as a family. The question is what you want to do about Marcus and his family's fraud." I wiped my eyes and straightened my shoulders. "I need legal advice before I do anything." My first call was to Diana Lawson, a lawyer who had helped organize fundraisers for Ethan's treatments years ago. She agreed to meet me immediately after hearing the urgency in my voice. In her downtown office, I showed her the video and explained the entire situation. "This is extremely serious," Diana said, her expression grave. "Insurance fraud at this level is a federal crime with potential prison sentences. But before we proceed, I need to make sure you understand the implications for your own situation." She explained that as Marcus's spouse, I could potentially be implicated in the fraud if I had known about it and participated in the deception. My status as a healthcare professional who had validated his condition complicated matters further. "The good news is that you have clear evidence you were deceived and took action once you discovered the truth. The bad news is that the Turners have virtually unlimited resources for legal defense and will likely try to paint you as complicit." "What should I do?" I asked. "First, we document everything. Every conversation, every observation that led to your suspicions. Then we approach the insurance company directly with your evidence. They have powerful fraud investigation units and a vested interest in recovering millions of dollars." Over the next week, I worked with Diana to compile a comprehensive record of my marriage and discovery. During this time, I received increasingly threatening messages from Marcus and his parents, ranging from financial ultimatums to veiled threats about my professional license. Diana helped me obtain a restraining order against the entire Turner family after one particularly menacing phone call from William Turner suggesting that accidents happen to people who cross powerful families. Our investigation uncovered something even more disturbing. The Turners had done this before, 3 years before Marcus's accident. His cousin Philip had claimed permanent disability from a boating accident, collecting millions before miraculously discovering an experimental treatment that restored his mobility after the insurance verification period ended. The same doctor, Gregory Turner, had certified his condition. Armed with this additional evidence of a pattern of fraud, Diana and I met with representatives from National Allied Insurance, the company that had paid Marcus's claim. Their fraud investigation team listened intently as I shared my story and evidence. "Mrs. Turner," the lead investigator said, "what you're describing is one of the most elaborate disability fraud schemes I've encountered in 20 years in this field." "Mitchell," I corrected automatically. My name is Samantha Mitchell. The marriage was part of the fraud. They asked dozens of detailed questions before thanking me for coming forward. We'll need to conduct our own investigation before taking action, but your evidence gives us a strong starting point. 3 weeks later, the Turner mansion was raided by federal agents. Marcus, William, Catherine, and Gregory were all arrested on charges of insurance fraud, conspiracy, and witness tampering. Jennifer Blackwood was detained as an accessory. The story exploded across Boston media, with headlines screaming about the miracle fraud and Turner family scandal. I found myself thrust into the spotlight as the whistleblower who had exposed the scheme. Some portrayed me as a gold digger who had turned on her benefactors when the arrangement soured. Others painted me as a victim who had shown tremendous courage. The truth, as always, was more complicated than either narrative. The preliminary hearing was a circus of media and spectators. I testified for 6 hours, describing in detail how I had been manipulated into the marriage and my gradual discovery of the truth. Marcus's attorneys tried to paint me as a willing participant who had turned state's evidence only after being denied additional money, but the video evidence of his confession was damning. He admitted to using my professional credentials to validate his condition. I explained to the judge. The entire marriage was orchestrated to make me an unwitting accomplice to their fraud. The Turners' high-priced legal team fought viciously, but the evidence continued to mount against them. Financial records showed suspicious transfers to doctors who had certified Marcus's condition. Security footage from various locations captured Marcus walking when he believed he was unobserved. Most damaging was testimony from a former household staff member who had been silenced with money and threats after accidentally witnessing Marcus standing. As the case progressed toward trial, the insurance company filed a separate civil suit against the Turner family to recover the fraudulently obtained funds plus damages. Their financial empire began to crumble as other insurance companies launched their own investigations into claims filed by Turner family members. My parents attended every court appearance, sitting behind me in silent support. Ryan came to the preliminary hearing but kept his distance, our eyes meeting briefly across the courtroom in a moment of sad acknowledgement of all we had lost. 6 months after my discovery by the pool, Marcus and his family accepted a plea deal. In exchange for reduced sentences, they provided information about other family members involved in similar schemes. Marcus would serve 3 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of probation. His parents received similar sentences for their roles in orchestrating the fraud. As for me, I was cleared of any wrongdoing, but still faced the collapse of the life I had reluctantly built. The divorce was expedited due to the criminal nature of the marriage, but the Turner family's assets were frozen during the legal proceedings, leaving my family's financial situation once again precarious. Diana helped me file for victim compensation and worked pro bono to ensure the divorce settlement acknowledged the fraudulent nature of the marriage. You deserve to start fresh after all this, she told me. Let's make sure you have the resources to do that. When the final judgment came down, National Allied Insurance announced they would award me 15% of the recovered funds as a whistleblower reward. The insurance company's spokesperson explained, Mrs. Mitchell's courage saved millions of dollars and exposed a sophisticated fraud ring. This reward reflects both our gratitude and our commitment to fighting insurance fraud. The settlement would be enough to secure my family's needs and give me a chance to rebuild my life, but the emotional toll of the ordeal couldn't be erased by financial security. The betrayal, the public scrutiny, and the loss of my relationship with Ryan had left deep wounds that would take time to heal. 1 year after Marcus Turner's sentencing, I stood in the doorway of my new physical therapy clinic, keys in hand, hardly believing this moment had arrived. The small building in a suburban medical complex wasn't glamorous, but the sign above the door reading Mitchell Rehabilitation Services filled me with quiet pride. The whistleblower reward had been substantial enough to help my family achieve stability and provide startup capital for my own practice. After the Turner scandal, I had found it difficult to continue working at Boston Memorial Hospital. Though my colleagues were supportive, patients sometimes recognized me from the news coverage, and the whispers followed me through the corridors. "That's her, the one who married the fraud guy. I heard she was in on it from the beginning. Didn't she get millions from the insurance company?" Starting my own practice had been both a practical decision and a healing one. Here, I could rebuild my professional identity on my terms, focusing on what had drawn me to physical therapy in the first place, helping people recover and reclaim their independence. My family had weathered the storm remarkably well, considering everything we had been through. Dad had found a new job as a facilities manager at a local college, with less pay than his previous position, but excellent benefits that covered much of Mom's medical needs. Mom's arthritis had stabilized with consistent medication, allowing her to volunteer at Ethan's day program a few times a week. Ethan himself had blossomed over the past year. The specialized therapies we could now afford had improved his mobility and communication significantly. He had even started taking online college courses in computer science, his intelligence finding new outlets as his physical limitations became less restrictive. "Your first patient arrives in 30 minutes, my receptionist, Megan," reminded me as she arranged fresh flowers on the front desk. "Mrs. Rodriguez, hip replacement, 6 weeks post-op." I nodded, taking a final moment to appreciate how far we had come before heading to my office to review Mrs. Rodriguez's file. The media frenzy had eventually died down as other scandals took its place, though occasionally a reporter would call requesting an interview for a Where Are They Now piece or a documentary about insurance fraud. I declined most of these requests, preferring to focus on rebuilding rather than reliving the past. The hardest part of moving forward had been the loss of my relationship with Ryan. Though the Turner scandal had ended my forced marriage, too much damage had been done to simply resume where we had left off. Ryan had completed his residency and accepted a position at a hospital in Chicago, putting physical and emotional distance between us. We had spoken only once after the trial, meeting for coffee at a neutral location. The conversation had been painfully polite, both of us careful to avoid blame or recriminations. "I'm proud of you for exposing them," he had said, stirring his coffee endlessly. "That took courage." "I wish I'd had the courage to refuse the arrangement from the beginning," I replied. Ryan had looked at me then with a mixture of sadness and acceptance. We were both doing what we thought was right at the time. Sometimes life doesn't give us perfect choices. We had parted with an awkward hug and promises to stay in touch that we both knew were unlikely to be kept. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. The community had been surprisingly supportive once the full story emerged. Former patients reached out to express confidence in my skills and integrity. Several had followed me to my new practice, becoming the foundation of my growing client list. My parents' neighbors, who had initially been uncomfortable with the scandal by association, eventually rallied around our family. Diana Lawson had become both a professional resource and a friend. Her guidance had been invaluable during the aftermath of the Turner case, and she continued to offer legal advice as I established my practice. "You've turned a terrible situation into something positive," she told me during a lunch meeting. Not everyone could have done that. 6 months after opening my clinic, I met Michael Dawson, a sports medicine doctor who referred a baseball player with a rotator cuff injury to my practice. Unlike many people I encountered, he didn't immediately connect me to the Turner scandal. When he finally made the association after our third professional consultation, his reaction was refreshingly straightforward. "That must have been incredibly difficult," he said simply. "I'm sorry you went through that." No judgment, no morbid curiosity. Just human empathy. We began dating slowly, both of us cautious for different reasons. Michael had been divorced for 3 years and was hesitant to rush into another relationship. I was still healing from the trauma of my experience with the Turners and the loss of what Ryan and I had shared. Our relationship developed gradually from professional respect to friendship to something deeper. Unlike the whirlwind romance with Ryan or the calculated arrangement with Marcus, my connection with Michael grew organically, built on honest communication and mutual support. I like that you're not afraid to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you. He told me one evening as we walked through Boston Common. That says a lot about who you are. The most profound lessons from my ordeal came from working with my new patients, particularly those with genuine spinal injuries and paralysis. Their daily courage and determination to improve their quality of life, even when full recovery wasn't possible, humbled me and gave perspective to my own challenges. Marissa, a 26-year-old patient paralyzed in a climbing accident, became a particular inspiration. Despite a prognosis similar to what Marcus had falsely claimed, she approached each therapy session with determination and even humor. On the bright side, she joked during a particularly difficult exercise, "I save a fortune on pedicures now." Working with patients like Marissa reminded me daily of the real human cost of what Marcus had done. His fraud wasn't just about money, it was a mockery of the genuine struggles faced by people with disabilities. My work became not just professional rehabilitation, but personal redemption, a way to honor the authentic battles my patients fought every day. 18 months after the Turner scandal broke, I received an unexpected letter. The return address was a federal correctional facility in Pennsylvania. Marcus had written to me. I almost threw it away unopened, but ultimately decided that whatever he had to say couldn't hurt me anymore. His letter was surprisingly brief and devoid of the manipulation I had come to expect from him. "I won't ask for forgiveness," he wrote. "What I did was unforgivable on many levels. But I want you to know that I recognize the harm I caused, not just to you and your family, but to people with genuine disabilities whose struggles I trivialized for profit. I'll live with that shame long after my sentence ends." I didn't respond to his letter. Some chapters needed to remain closed. 2 years after opening my clinic, I stood before a group of physical therapy students at Boston University, invited to speak about ethics in healthcare. I shared my story not as a cautionary tale of victimhood, but as an illustration of how easily ethical boundaries could be blurred when personal and professional lives intertwined. The most important relationship in healthcare isn't with insurance companies or hospital administrators, I told them. It's the sacred trust between provider and patient. Protecting that trust sometimes requires difficult choices and personal sacrifice, but it's the foundation everything else is built upon. After the lecture, a young woman approached me, her expression earnest. "I followed your case in the news," she said. "It actually inspired me to switch my focus to working with spinal injury patients. I wanted to do real good in an area where someone had done such harm." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that even our darkest experiences can create unexpected light for others to follow. The Turners had orchestrated an elaborate deception that nearly destroyed my life, but in exposing their fraud, I had found a strength and purpose I might never have discovered otherwise. Today, as I help my last patient of the day complete her exercises, I reflect on how far I've come from that desperate young woman who agreed to marry a stranger to save her family. The journey has been painful, but I've emerged with a deeper understanding of my own resilience and values. What began as a story of manipulation and betrayal has transformed into one of redemption and growth. I still carry scars from the experience, but they no longer define me. Instead, they remind me of the power of truth and the importance of standing firm in your principles, even when the cost seems unbearably high. Have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing came at a personal cost? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming life's challenges and finding strength in unexpected places. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes our greatest growth comes from our most difficult trials.